When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
I'm NFL linebacker TJ Watt, and this is my personal best. YPB by Abercrombie is the activewear I'm always wearing. That's why I reached out to co-design their latest drop. I worked with designers to create high-performance activewear that holds up to my toughest workouts. Shop YPB by Abercrombie in-store, online, and in the app. Because your personal best is greater than anything.
The Presidencies of the United States is a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Hello and welcome to the Presidencies of the United States. I'm your host, Jerry Landry. We are wrapping up our 3-part Seat at the Table episode on William Wirt with this penultimate chapter. In case for some reason you're listening to this episode without listening to parts 1 or 2, I do advise you to go back and listen to those parts before proceeding, as we covered Wirt's younger days, including some tragedies in his early life, some of his wild times as a young man, his career leading up to becoming Attorney General, and his cabinet tenure as the longest-serving Attorney General to date, 2025 as of this recording. We'll pick up where we left off last episode with Wirt leaving office. But before we do that, I want to say a special thank you to my friend and fellow podcaster, Howard Dory of the Plodding Through the President's podcast. Howard and his wife Jess in their podcast explore various moments in presidential history, ranging from the tale of Jefferson's killer ram to the Billy Possum stuffed animal made to honor William Howard Taft, but which never seemed to earn a special place in kids' hearts like the teddy bear did. While they do uncover some hilarious stories, they also explore more serious topics like Andrew Jackson's adopted native child Lincoya and the story of the Amistad captives. If you don't listen to Plodding Through the Presidents already, just go to the website, plodpod.com, or search for Plodding Through the Presidents wherever you get your podcast. I'll also have a link on the page for this episode on my website, presidenciespodcast.com. At my website, you can also find the sources used for this episode, past episodes of the podcast, and links to more information about all of the American presidents. You can also find out how you, yes, you, dear listener, can help to support the Presidency's podcast. Whether you decide to become a patron for as little as $1 a month, or fulfill books on my research wish list, or leave a rating and review, or just tell a friend about the podcast, I cannot thank you enough. If you'd like to reach out to me with any questions or comments, please feel free to shoot me an email at presidenciespodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already, you can follow me on Blue Sky, Facebook, or Mastodon as Presidencies, on the formerly known as Twitter at Presidencies89, or on Instagram and Threads as Presidencies Podcast. Without further ado, after this brief message, let's get back to my conversation about Wirt with Howard.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Now, as noted by Jabor, quote, the Wirt's decision to leave Washington had a dramatic effect on their relationship. finally getting out of the Washington scene, able to establish a new household. It seems like, they kind of saw it as this is a fresh start. And they had considered moving to New York City at one point, but Elizabeth, of course, she preferred Baltimore. And so they were like, let's just go there. You already have a legal practice there. It's fine. But Elizabeth was concerned about William's health when he departed to travel first to Boston for a court appearance in June, then to Annapolis in July 1829, and urged him to return home as soon as possible. Though William, as usual, would not accede to her urgings, he did at least acknowledge in August that, quote, I continue well, but exceedingly tired and worn out with this endless work down here. This, I hope, will be my last hard cause for some time to come, and rest will be very sweet to me.
All right, great. Sounds like he's done doing big things with his life. We're winding down. Good for Wirt.
Yeah, he's winding down this time. Not like the other times, but this time he's doing it. Yeah. By August 1829, Wirt wrote to Dabney Carr that, quote, I'm more tired of work than I was in the beginning. Indeed, Jackson's win and the changing political climate was disenchanting Wirt from the allure of public life. As described by Jabbour, quote, William Wirt viewed with mistrust the nation's turn away from refined leadership to popular representation. His own loss of office as a result of Jackson's spoil system ensured his continued loyalty to a mythical past to which the present was a poor successor. So, it's a weird time. He's getting used to the new normal, and he's like, the good old days. But, of course, Wirt continues on. In early 1830, Wirt was called on to represent District Court Judge James H. Peck, who had been impeached by the U.S. House of Representatives. With Wirt's efforts on his behalf, Peck was acquitted by the Senate by a vote of 21 for conviction versus 22 for acquittal. So, it was a close one, but he managed to get through.
Is that a 2/3 thing?
I need to look and see if that's a 2/3. I think it is. I'm trying to remember if it's 2/3 to impeach, 2/3 to convict, or both.
I know for the president, it's to, 2/3
Yeah.
to convict. Probably the same for judges.
It may be 2/3. Editing Jerry here. Just confirming that Howard was correct that in federal impeachment trials for judges, as well as with the president, a 2/3 majority is required to find the accused guilty. Yeah.
Okay, so it's still close.
Still close.
Very
Yeah.
divided.
But Wirt was able to get him acquitted, so good job. But in the spring of 1830, the entire Wirt family was ill, and Elizabeth struggled to take care of everyone. In July, William began to suffer from, quote, pain and swelling in the region of the kidneys, and Elizabeth began to worry that he wouldn't survive. Now, to try to facilitate their recovery, the entire family traveled in August to the springs in Bath, Virginia. Unfortunately, Elizabeth herself now fell ill from dysentery.
Oh, man.
Yeah, this poor woman cannot get a break.
No.
And she would finally recover in late September for them to return home, but wow, that is just not good. Now, at some point in 1830, Wirt delivered remarks to some societies at Rutgers College on the importance of lifelong learning, asserting that, quote, our happiness is never present, but always in the prospect. We are constantly reaching forward some object ahead of us, which we flatter ourselves we will fill. Thus, hope cheats us on from point to point, and at the close of a long life, however successful it may have been, we find that we have been chasing meteors which have dissolved at the touch.
Wow, that's not inspirational?
No. It's like, Wirt, you're in a dark place, friend.
Is this like a commencement speech where he's like, it does not get better? Let me tell you about the arrival fallacy. You think things are going to get better when you move to a new place, when you do a new thing, when your wife says, we need a new house, William, or hypothetically whatever, but it's not. It's always bad. Good luck, kids.
Good luck, kids. You're in for it now. Yeah, definitely not inspirational. But William was in Washington, D.C. for court over Christmas 1830, again, away from home for Christmas. It's like,
Sure, yeah.
can you not just stop working for like a day? Unfortunately, he was soon summoned home to Baltimore as his 16-year-old daughter, Agnes, had fallen gravely ill. William was able to be by her bedside when she passed away from dysentery on December 30th.
Ah.
Yeah.
So that's how many kids down?
So I know we've got at least two. And I know, there were some younger ones that were lost, but
Yeah.
this one especially would hit both William and Elizabeth hard. And as noted by Jabor, after Agnes's passing, both, quote, turned away from their separate responsibilities to a shared concern with religious duties and the hope that their family would be reunited in heaven. As Wirt wrote after her death, quote, she, i.e. Agnes, was my companion, my office companion, my librarian, my clerk. She pursued her studies in my office by my side, sat with me, walked with me, was my inexpressibly sweet and inseparable companion, never left me but to go sit with her mother. We knew all her intelligence, all her pure and delicate sensibility, the quickness and power of her perceptions, her seraphic love.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was definitely a tough one for him. Of course, Wirt would go on with work, which, understandable, Hopefully that helped to give him something to take his mind off of things. And this would actually be a rather big case because he would work as legal counsel for the Cherokee in the case of Cherokee Nation v. Georgia. Now, this case stemmed from the decades-long effort by the government of Georgia to force the Cherokee off of their lands. Now, this trying to force them off took on a particular urgency when gold was discovered on Cherokee lands in 1829, and thus Jackson supporters in Congress pushed forward a bill, quote, to move the Cherokees west of the Mississippi River. Now, over the years, Wirt had expressed his sympathy for Native peoples, though he had no reason to believe that President Andrew Jackson would enforce the Supreme Court's ruling if they ruled in favor of the Cherokee. And with the presidential election coming up in a couple of years, Wirt thought that may work to the National Republicans' advantage to show Jackson acting in violation of the nation's justice system. But going back to Wirt delivered his arguments before the Supreme Court in June 1830, asserting that the Cherokee had done everything asked of them by Americans. Quote, we asked them for a portion of their lands, and they ceded it. We asked them again and again, and they continued to cede, until they have now reduced themselves within the narrowest compass that their own subsistence will permit. We promised them, and they trusted us. Shall they be deceived? Is this the high mark to which the American nation has been so strenuously and successfully pressing forward? If truth and faith and honor and justice have fled from every other part of our country, we shall find them here. If not, our sun has gone down in treachery, blood, and crime in the face of the world.
He could give a speech.
He could give a speech. He could land it. Now, William complained during his work on this case that, quote, though it is Saturday night, still I have no rest, but am run off my legs by business. Oh, I am so weary. Although I have now only a few more days of court, I dread them, for I am so exhausted that I feel as if I could stand no more.
I mean, I I'm glad he wrote that, and we have records of stuff like that. But it's just like, if you're that tired, man, maybe it's not journal time. Maybe just go to bed.
Why don't you put down the pen and just go to
Yeah.
bed?
Maybe we don't light a candle and talk about how tired we are.
Hold on, I've got to write another letter about how tired I am. Yeah.
Oh, it's Xmas. I've got to go buy some paper to write my wife about why I'm not with her.
I'm so sorry I'm not with you at Xmas. I am so tired. Yeah, just put the pen down. Go to bed.
Go to bed, Wirt. That's the
Go to bed, Wirt. Just go to bed. Now, ultimately, Chief Justice John Marshall drafted the ruling that, quote, dismissed the case for want of jurisdiction as, quote, the Cherokee Nation was not a sovereign state, but a domestic dependent nation. So, not necessarily, it wasn't awful, but not necessarily the ruling they were looking for.
Yeah.
So, time passes on. In November 1831, their daughter Liz married Louis Goldsboro, and the two moved into the Wirt's home in Washington. But after this moment of happiness, William's health took a turn for the worse the next month, and he, quote, suffered from an attack of fever, cough, nausea, and a sort of suffocation. It was thought that he may be near death, but luckily, again, he recovered. Though even as late as March, when Elizabeth accompanied him to Washington to attend to the Supreme Court session, because of course he wasn't going to miss the Supreme Court, she reported that his, quote, threatening symptoms still continued.
Not good.
But he managed to make it, and it would be in this session of the Supreme Court that Wirt would represent the Cherokee Nation again in the case of Worcester v. Georgia. In this case, Wirt represented Samuel A. Worcester, a missionary who was one of 7, quote, convicted for violating a Georgia law that prohibited whites from residing on Cherokee land. Now, while 5 of the 7 accepted a plea deal, Worcester was one of 2 who refused to reach an agreement and was, quote, sentenced to 4 years of hard labor in the Georgia penitentiary. The majority of the court ruled for Worcester and asserted, quote, that the Georgia statute was an unconstitutional infringement of the federal government's exclusive control over Indian affairs and ordered the release of the 2 prisoners. And so this is one of those landmark cases that says, no, federal government trumps state government. You've got to let him go. As expected, the governor of Georgia refused to comply, and President Jackson supposedly quipped, quote, John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it. Now, that's a bit of, it's probably apocryphal. He may not have said exactly that, but he certainly acted that way.
Yeah.
And it would take 18 months after the ruling before the 2 missionaries were released by the state of Georgia.
Wow.
So, but hey, he won. He won the case.
Yeah.
For what it was worth. As noted by Jabor, around this time, quote, Elizabeth abandoned her efforts to advance the family status for the enjoyment of family life. However, even she would join in William's last foray into the political realm.
Uh-oh.
So here we go. Buckle up, because in May 1831, friends started approaching Wirt about attending the National Republican Convention to be held in Baltimore in December, as well as allowing his name to be put forward for a U.S. Senate seat. Now, as Wirt wrote about the latter around the time, quote, what do I care for the Senate? I'm rather too old to start now, for the first time, on such a course, and have neither speed nor bottom for the race. He did, however, express his support for Henry Clay's presidential candidacy, calling him, quote, the soundest amongst the candidates. He will make a good president. Little did he know, however, that events were going to bring him technically into opposition with Clay. Because starting in August 1831, the National Republicans of Pennsylvania helped put Wirt's name forward on the national stage when they nominated Henry Clay for president and Wirt for vice president. But the big one came in late September 1831, when the Anti-Masonic Party held a convention and nominated Wirt as their choice for president.
Ah, yeah. It's your time, Wirt.
It's your time.
This is it. Anti-Masonic party. Yeah. I don't remember. I think they reigned for, I don't know how long. How many presidents, how many anti-Masonic presidents there were?
I mean, you thought the party was never going to end. Ain't no party like an anti-Masonic party. Now, he wasn't the first one that they kind of turned to, because Supreme Court Associate Justice John McLean had been an early favorite of the party, but when he withdrew his name from consideration, anti-Masonic leaders turned to Wirt as a suitable alternative, and he received 108 of the 111 delegate votes before it was made unanimous by acclamation. Amos Elmaker of Pennsylvania was named as his running mate.
Oh, yeah, Amos.
Yeah, old Amos.
Yeah, famous.
Famous.
Famous Elmaker, was it?
Yeah, that's got to be the same guy, right?
Elmaker, yeah. His ancestors made L's.
Yeah, there we go.
Where that name came from.
Now, Wirt described the nomination, quote, as if a thunderbolt had dropped at his feet in a clear day. He was like, they're nominating me for what?
I love this guy's metaphors. The thunderbolt.
The thunderbolt.
Hope is just chasing meteors. It's worthless. Thunderbolts at my feet. I can't walk anywhere without astronomy killing me.
Exactly. Now, despite the shock, Wirt accepted the nomination, asserting that, quote, if the opposition to Jackson choose to rally upon me, I may become its instrument in the hands of Providence of rescuing the country from its present fallen condition.
Wow, he's like, if I can have another chance at losing a battle against Jackson, well, hell, put me in.
Why not? Tag me in, come on. But there was one thing that he kind of had to get off his chest and, go ahead and be honest about. He had to let the anti-Masons know that, quote, in very early life, I was myself initiated into the mysteries of Freemasonry. Those guys that you're against, I'm kind of technically one of them.
Details.
The little details.
I mean, a lot of people in AA used to drink.
There you go.
Everybody starts somewhere.
Everybody starts somewhere. And he's like, I didn't pursue it further. I didn't enter into Masonic Hall for over 30 years.
I didn't inhale.
It was college,
Everybody experimented with the Mason.
Everybody did, it's just what you do in college. He also had to admit that he saw nothing, quote, criminal in the institution and viewed, quote, Masonry as nothing more than a social and charitable club.
Let's crush them.
Let's crush them. How dare you have fun and socialize?
This is the saddest acceptance speech ever. He's basically like, whatever. I mean, okay.
Everything that you're for, I'm against. But we're cool, right?
I guess we all hate Jackson, right? So
can we talk about Andrew Jackson? I think we'll be good there.
Let's focus on what we hate.
No. I don't care that you're called the anti-Masonic party. Let's anti-Jackson party. Can we change the name?
I really don't want to do this. I wasn't your first choice. You don't want me to do this. Let's do this.
Let's do this. And miraculously, these revelations did not change the mind of the party. They were like, we're cool.
They're probably like, you know what? We're all Masons too. This is just an opportunity for us to get ahead.
Yeah. I mean, we're just claiming to be anti-Masons, but we're really Masons at heart. But Wirt did stress that even if he should become president, quote, I shall not change my manners. They are a part of my nature. If the people choose to take me as I am, well. If not, they will only leave me where I've always preferred to be, enjoying the independence of private life.
With my whiskey.
With my whiskey, my cigars,
As long as I can bring that with me.
We're good. You're getting what you see. Come on.
Yeah. He's like, all right, I'll be president, but I'm I'm not going to work harder. I'm just going to keep working like I do.
I'm going to keep wording with my whiskey. It's okay if I'm drunk like half the time, right? That's okay, right? Now, in a marked difference from the past, seeing this as a God-ordained mission, Elizabeth supported William in this work. When a short biography of Wirt was prepared for campaign purposes, Elizabeth set about editing it before its publication and circulation. So she was actually on board with him running for president.
I mean, at a certain point, you got to do something that occupies you. And sometimes throwing yourself into a sort of Stockholm syndrome can be that occupation. Just go with it. Politics, it's great. Yeah.
Sure, it's fine.
Or maybe at this point, she's like, you know what? I almost had to spend Xmas with him this year, and I don't want that to happen again.
We got to get him a job. Well, and ultimately, with Henry Clay's nomination as the National Republican candidate that year, and with Wirt being bypassed, because that was one of his things, he's like, well, maybe this will make the National Republicans turn towards me as kind of a compromise candidate. No, they went with Clay. It soon became clear the opposition would not be rallied behind him, and politics would again prove disappointing. Wirt wrote to a friend on October 25th, 1832, about his greatly diminished chances, asserting that, quote, "It will be a strange affair if it should happen," i.e., he was elected president, "but I have no thought of it. The game is certainly within the power of the die, but it requires so many fortunate throws in succession that it would be next to a miracle to win."
Pretty much.
And indeed, Wirt only earned 7 electoral votes, those of Vermont.
That's pretty good, though, for this, little party.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people who have never gotten 7 electoral votes, so.
Most people haven't.
So. But he did at least have a good showing in Pennsylvania. He earned 40% of the popular vote there. So, it could have been worse.
It could have been Wirt.
It could have been Wirt.
That's a good campaign slogan. What could be Wirt?
What could be Wirt than Wirt? Vote Wirt. Oh, gosh. Poor Wirt.
Yeah, poor Elizabeth. Oh, man.
Poor Elizabeth. Oh, I've got to spend Xmas with him.
You think he was like, maybe if you'd edited that book a little better.
He probably did blame her. I think it's all your fault. So while the election was playing out, developments continued in the domestic space for the Wirts. Happily, in early July 1832, their daughter Rosa was married. However, when Elizabeth's mother, Catherine Gamble, died in 1832, she left to her daughter an estate separate from the Wirt's second home in Richmond that her parents had owned. So, mother died, but they did at least inherit a new piece of property. In mid-August, Wirt traveled to Bedford Springs in Pennsylvania for, quote, "the mountain air and the Bedford water," for a cure to what ailed him. But instead, he suffered from, quote-unquote, spasmodic cramps and diarrhea.
It sounds like the water everywhere is just out to kill you.
Yeah, just stay away from water.
Stick to the beer and the whiskey.
Yeah. You got whiskey right there. Why are you dealing with water?
Well, he's got that pitcher.
He's got the pitcher now, so.
He's got to use it.
He's got to use it. Come on.
He went through hell to get that pitcher.
But he did recover enough. By November, he returned to work in Annapolis, but Elizabeth continued to worry over the state of his health. Naturally, he's getting sick like every year, and, bad sick.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he expressed his worries to his brother-in-law, William Cabell, that, quote, "What my practice may be worth next year, no one knows. The business is getting worse and worse, and, at my time of life, is not very likely to grow better."
Okay, Eeyore.
No, he's getting even worse.
I think you're just cherry picking, Jerry. I think there's a lot of cheerful, happy letters he was writing, Hallmark cards, and you're just looking for the negative. That's the only explanation I can think of. You and Jabor are just focusing on these bad things.
We're focused on the bad things. But 1832 marked the year when Wirt started considering the idea of retiring in Florida.
Wow. He's
Yes.
ahead of his time.
Yes, Wirt wanted to be one of the original Florida retirees.
Was it retirement or was it like, I would like to go someplace where I think Native Americans might shoot me and my body will never be found in a swamp?
Well, of course, they wanted to have some business ventures there because, of course. And so he and Elizabeth began to discuss the idea and how they could finance it. Elizabeth offered to sell some lots in Richmond as well as James River stock that she had inherited from her mother, while William would sell some scattered lots he already owned in Florida in order to fund the move to, quote, 200 acres of splendid land on Lake Miccosukee, where the Wirts intended to establish a plantation, of course, quote, worked with approximately 50 slaves.
Wow, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
it won't take a job in Charlottesville.
Won't take a job on Charlottesville, but let's go to, the swamp in Florida and start a plantation.
Yeah, that's a sure economic thing at this point.
Yes. And this sounds, anybody who knows Florida, it's like, this is probably not a good idea, but they had rose-colored glasses about the scheme, thinking that it would be, quote, an escape from the mundane concerns of daily life. Obviously, they knew nothing about Florida. In early 1833, they changed their plans a little bit. Rather than enslaving individuals as workers, the Wirts got the idea, along with their son-in-law, Louis Goldsborough, to, quote, get 50 or 60 select families of recently arrived German immigrants to be indentured to work land that William owned near Monticello, Florida, in the Panhandle.
Okay.
So maybe we don't want to enslave people, but we'll indenture some Germans.
Again, baby steps.
Baby steps.
Although that's, probably more than a baby step.
Yeah.
In that it's not, lifelong inherited,
Yeah.
enslavement.
Yeah. So there's that. And William wrote around the time, quote, my wife never liked the idea of Florida with Negroes, but she is so delighted with this project.
She didn't trust their enslaved people back in Virginia, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's,
So, yeah, probably not good to be in the middle of nowhere in Florida with people who you're enslaving. They may not like it.
Right, yeah.
However, they didn't let their son-in-law, Thomas Randall, know of the change of plans soon enough, and he purchased 40 enslaved individuals at an estate sale for nearly $11,000. Now, rather than following suggestions to just sell them again, William decided to make the enslaved individuals, quote, auxiliary to the main plan of German colonization, as they would form a good corps de reserve in case the Germans should prove faithless or unable to stand the climate. So enslaving people is your backup plan.
I don't like this plan.
No.
I can't imagine Elizabeth did either.
This is not a good plan at all. Ultimately, around 150 Germans would set sail for Florida, but they arrived in a weakened state and were in no condition to start working the land for profit. Before long, many of the Germans had fled. They looked around and they said, we are in a frickin' swamp. Let's get out of here.
Wow.
9. Thus, Wirt looked to make a deal to exchange their remaining property in Richmond to purchase 20 or 30 more enslaved individuals.
Elizabeth probably should have just kept her mouth shut about things she didn't like.
Yeah.
Because that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah, he's going to be all in. Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah. No, I said no, don't do that. You want to do it? Okay, let's do that.
None? You want to enslave no people? Okay, all right, 40, 70, okay.
Yeah, there we go. Meanwhile, Wirt's illness returned. As his doctor advised rest, William increasingly became concerned about the Florida project and the debt that he had taken out to fund it, because at this point the Wirts were in debt for $22,000. While they traveled to Virginia Springs in May to help with his recovery, William and Elizabeth had a frank discussion about their debts, and William gave his wife power of attorney in case she needed to act in his name. When they returned to Richmond, William's condition worsened. Thankfully, by late September 1833, he had recovered and began to prepare for what he expected would be his final term appearing before the Supreme Court. While they continued to do what they could to balance their finances, the Wirts continued to struggle under the weight of debt as 1833 gave way to 1834. But the misery was not out of the way just yet, because 1833 would end on a sad note with the news of the death of their oldest daughter, Laura Wirt Randall, in Florida in mid-December 1833. And William and Elizabeth had actually been looking forward to being able to spend time with Laura once they actually moved south, but that was not to be. While preparing to make their way to Florida that year, William, Elizabeth, and their 3 younger daughters took rooms in Baltimore before William went to Washington in January 1834 for the upcoming Supreme Court term. On February 9th, William went to church, walking in a cold drizzle. Soon after returning home, he developed a fever and was sent to bed. He spent the next few days in a feverish state. On February 17th, he told Elizabeth, quote, "Wife, I am going before you." As described by Robert, quote, "In his final agony, all decent professional courtesies were accorded him. The doctors embanked the fevered patient in hot bricks and encased his feet in scalding poultices. They applied 40 leeches to the left temple and behind the left ear, and they blistered him around his right ear, his wrist, and elsewhere. In his delirium, he argued his causes as though before the Supreme Court." As you can imagine, this treatment did not help, and on the morning of February 18th, 1834, William Wirt passed away at the age of 61 in the boarding house in Washington, D.C. Yeah.
What a life.
Yeah. And when news of his death started making its way around the capital city, the Supreme Court adjourned in mourning, and various leaders gathered, including Chief Justice Marshall and Senator Daniel Webster, to deliver remarks in his honor. His funeral on February 20th was attended by President Jackson, the entire cabinet, Senator Henry Clay, Senator John C. Calhoun, now Representative John Quincy Adams, and many other dignitaries. Adams would also deliver a eulogy to Wirt in a joint session of Congress the next day. Wirt was laid to rest in the Congressional Cemetery in Washington, where he remains to this day. His former cabinet colleague, Samuel L. Southard, at this point serving as U.S. Senator from New Jersey, delivered a memorial tribute to Wirt in the House chamber on March 18, 1834. Elizabeth spent the months after William's death, quote, establishing a lasting memorial to her husband. But sadly, she had little time to mourn, as creditors were soon pressing her to repay the massive debt that William had left her with. In March, she had to arrange an auction of their belongings, then shortly after left Baltimore for Richmond, where she and the remaining children in her household stayed with her sister Nancy. From there, Elizabeth set to work getting the people who owed her late husband debts, including but not limited to the federal government, to pay up, and then arranged payment schedules for her debts. After the Panic of 1837, Elizabeth finally moved to the plantation called Wirtland in Florida, the precursor to Disneyland.
Yeah, Wirtland.
Wirtland. To manage affairs there directly. Elizabeth continued to struggle to the point that her daughter reported in 1840 that Elizabeth had been forced to sell personal items in order to buy bread. Still, she ensured that her sons Dabney and Henry went to the University of Virginia, while Will Jr. went for medical training in Baltimore. In 1842, Elizabeth turned over management of the plantation to her brother Robert and went to live with her daughter Catherine and her husband in Annapolis. When her daughters Laura and Catherine passed away, it was Elizabeth who took charge of their respective children. Even at that age, she is still having to take care of kids.
Yeah.
Finally, after a few months of illness in January 1857, at the age of 72, Elizabeth Wirt passed away, and her estate, which included the property inherited from her husband, was valued at $70,000. She had managed to come back from the brink of financial ruin.
Yeah, it takes a lot.
Yeah. The remaining children would end up in a long, drawn-out battle over the estate, but that is beyond the scope of our episode. Now, talking about legacy, in terms of the legacy that Wirt left, Robert describes how, quote, he has been rated as the first great attorney general. His oratory charmed an entire generation, and his periods became the favorite of tens of thousands who first committed them to memory for declamation in school exercises. In the words of one literary historian, Wirt for many years was regarded as the chief Southern man of letters, heading the first literary coterie of any importance in the region. However, even in writing in 1972, Robert acknowledged that, quote, the gap between the man's prestige during his lifetime and now is greater than for any other public figure in American history, and likely that gap has only grown since then. Indeed, as Glassner notes, quote, Wirt was one of the most active lawyers before the Supreme Court in the first third of the 19th century, arguing 174 cases in 14 years, an average of 12 cases per Supreme Court session. He won 96 of them and lost 68, and in 10 cases, the court made no clear decision. Now, Margaret Bayard Smith modeled the characters in one of her novels, A Winter in Washington, after William and Elizabeth Wirt, so that's part of his legacy. Also, Glassner notes that for years after his death, there were William Wirt societies and literary institutes in various cities across the U.S.
Nice.
Now, as we should note, and as you share in your podcast, Howard, in an episode that we will have a link to on the page for this episode, Wirt is also infamous in that in the early 2000s, someone contacted the Congressional Cemetery to let them know that Wirt's tomb had been broken into in the 1970s and his skull removed.
Yes. Who does that?
I know. Who are these people who are doing this? But Howard, I will let you tell that story in your episode. I highly encourage folks to check it out. It is a fascinating episode and a fascinating, morbid part of Wirt's legacy.
Yeah, and still he's not famous, you know?
And still he's not famous. He can't even have his head stolen and be famous.
You know?
Now, as noted by historian Anya Jabor, quote, although they never attained true gentry status as great planners, the Wirts were prominent, respected Southerners with close ties to many of Virginia's leading families. The Wirts were lifelong border residents. Living in the upper South cities, they resided on the outskirts of a region that is often described as a hybrid of traditional and modern culture. The Wirts were intimately acquainted both with the plantation lifestyle of the Old South and with the urban professional milieu more commonly associated with the Northeast. So just fascinating to think about their way of life, where they lived, the time they lived. There was a lot going on, and they had so many ties to so much. But we'll give Glassner the last word on Wirt. He wrote, quote, William Wirt is chiefly remembered in the indexes of books about Patrick Henry, Aaron Burr, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, and John Quincy Adams, or in endnotes to studies of 19th century literature. Perhaps Wirt has been relegated to obscurity because historians have found him so difficult to classify. Was he best known as a lawyer, essayist, biographer, orator, or public servant? In truth, he was well known as all of these to his contemporaries. And with that, my friend, we are at the end of the life of William Wirt.
What a life it was.
What are your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts on Wirt? I'm just struck by how well-known and well-regarded he was back then. And like you said, that his fame just kind of completely dropped off. And it's not like people turned on him. It's not like a Jefferson or somebody like that where the tides of public opinion shift based on, morality. They just forgot him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's really interesting to me. I think that he is hard to pin down. He popped up in all these places, like Forrest Gump, except a brilliant orator. And he didn't really have one clear through line driving him, and he didn't end up as president or as this, pinnacle apex role that you can point to. He was attorney general for a long time, and we still don't really respect those. So yeah, it's interesting. I think he's a fascinating person and deserves more study, but it's still kind of hard to wrap my head around what is Wirt. He's just a little too complex for that.
Well, and let's see if we can kind of quantify our thoughts on Wirt, starting with the whole picture round. So this round looks at the overall career and character of the cabinet member, and we can each award up to 10 points maximum.
Okay. Oh, it's on me?
Yes,
go for a number.
Go ahead.
1 to 10. Let's see. His whole life. I mean, he just for being attorney general for 12 years and then continuing to argue cases in front of the Supreme Court that were for a pretty damn noble cause. It's going to be high, I don't know what deserves a 10. Do you have to be president someday to get a 10? His contribution, I'm leaning toward 8.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it has to be high. What I think brings him down, and Howard, you pointed to this, that it doesn't, if there is any common thread through his life, it's this desire for stability, and especially like financial stability. He was constantly driven in work by wanting to bring about, and it's understandable. This was somebody who was orphaned. This was somebody who lost his parents very early. He didn't have that stability early on, and so naturally that's going to be a driving factor for him. But what does that do in terms of his career? He's just looking for work, and he'll do whatever it takes to get that financial stability. He does have some times that he breaks out of that, and he's definitely, he is interested in so much. He's interested in this creativity and writing. He's interested in doing biographies, and he only does one, but, he at least does one. And he has these causes that he does champion, but it seems like that's just his big driving factor, is this wanting financial security for him and his family to be able to have that legacy. And even with that, he doesn't achieve it. He leaves his family in debt.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm going to go with a 7.5 here, just a little lower. It's definitely got to be high, but he's definitely not. I think there are some folks that will get to that 10. I just don't think that Wirt's there, but still it is remarkable what all he was able to achieve, and especially like having that big of an impact on the judiciary and arguing so many cases in judicial history. That's important. And it's important that he was attorney general for so long. I think it's definitely a successful career. There was still room that it could have been better, but
yeah. I will say I did not know we could do half points.
Would you like to?
That doesn't change my answer.
Yes.
But yeah. He's just it is fascinating how he was able to, I mean, thanks to Elizabeth and the people he enslaved and probably paid something to, he was able to indulge his interest in the arts and in essaying, and I mean, folks like Thomas Jefferson did the same kind of thing. But Wirt just seems really good at all those different things, and that's fascinating. So
yes,
yeah, that's something that's sticking with me.
So sticking with your 8?
Sticking with my 8. Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about it for a few more minutes now.
So that gets him up to 15.5, so strong start. And next up is our go-getter round. So this round looks at the impact of the cabinet member during their time in the cabinet. And just like with the last round, we can each award up to 10 points maximum.
Okay. So this is basically his contribution to the cabinet
Mm-hmm.
and whether he... Okay, but yeah, all right. Let's see. Now, I feel like you have to judge based on the role,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because he wasn't Secretary of State. He was the Attorney General. And the expectations weren't that high coming in, but he went in and he sort of established this role and organized it and did some cool stuff there. So I don't know. I'm feeling pretty high, but I'm feeling like this is pretty high. I'm sober. I'm thinking 9.
Yeah, I think that this is definitely the apex of his career. You know, he comes into this role that has been ill-defined. You know, what is the Attorney General? What are they supposed to do? He comes in and he says, well, first of all, we need some organization. Where are the previous papers? What's our organizational system? Oh, there is none. Okay, I'll go ahead and put that into place. Okay, well, all these people are coming to me and asking for legal opinions, but that's not really what the Attorney General is supposed to do. You know, to have the postmaster of Washington, D.C. come in and ask me for a legal opinion, that's not my role. And so being able to put some more definition to the role of Attorney General, and likewise, he was somebody who was seen as a valued member to the point that they invited him to all the cabinet meetings, even if he didn't show up because, you know, he was in Washington so much for the minority of the year.
He had a lot of jobs.
Yeah. But still, he was included, he was invited, he was part of the conversation, and it really does seem like he was impactful in that role. So I think I'm going to go with a 9 as well.
Nice. All right.
So that gets him up to 33.5.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned you think that was the apex of his career, and I would agree, but I think the apex should have been his arguing cases about the Cherokee in front of the Supreme Court. Because of the things that he said, he made them cases that were ultimately about, you know, the promises to these people and seeing them and as humans with human rights that should be respected. It was almost like his Amistad, and he won, but the bad things happened anyway.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't really prevent the horrors of the Indian Removal Act that he was against. So it had a sad ending, and it's not remembered as this great triumph in the way that, you know, if it were a fairy tale story, it might be. But yeah, his argument in front of the Supreme Court for those things, I think, really could have been this career-topping historical moment. But yeah, Jackson wasn't about to let that happen.
No. Because Andrew Jackson doesn't respect anybody's authority except his own. So he's got a strong start thus far, 33.5. But now we have to get to our hot seat round. This round discusses any disgraceful behavior of or actions committed by the cabinet member, and this disgrace does not have to be during their tenure of office in the cabinet. And in this one, we're actually going to take away points. We can each take away up to 10 points.
Okay. Let's see. So, I mean, there's the issue of slavery.
Yeah.
He may not have liked it, but he certainly practiced it and leaned into it more toward the end. So that's going to, you know, is there a regular number of points you take away for an enslaver?
We kind of feel it out. It's typically around 5, just because, you know, there's no way to quantify the evil of slavery. Trying to leave some room for other types of disgrace, but definitely you're just automatically going to get a few points here. This is not going to be a good round.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to I'm going to take away at least 3 for that. Not the full 5. I mean, it's not his fault the Germans ran away. No, that's terrible. So the 3 for that. And then I don't know, it's hard to call it a disgrace, but it sounds like he wasn't the best husband.
No.
And I can take a point off for that. And then there was the supposed alleged affair, but, he at least convinced the woman and her father to say it didn't happen, or maybe it didn't at all. And I don't love that he defended a murderer so clearly. I mean, I get that that's like your job, but you choose to take on the case.
Yeah.
It's not like the Boston Massacre here. Okay, so I'm taking away 5 total, and I'm not going to justify it anymore.
Well, and I think that's a good place, and I'm actually going to match your 5, just because, and that's, we get people like Jefferson who it seems even more complex. We get people like Calhoun, who's actively trying to, promote and expand slavery. Wirt wasn't that. And he also benefited from the enslavement of individuals. That was his retirement plan, was to do even more of that. That's not a good look. And like you said, Howard, it just does not seem like he was a good husband. It seems like, even though he claimed, his work was about, trying to provide for his family, trying to provide for his wife and children, I think they suffered in some ways because he was so driven by that, instead of just saying, hey, maybe I need to be at home a little more. Yeah. So that's definitely some disgrace. On the more positive side, he definitely did seem like, when he was in public life, that he was committed to doing a good job. He wanted to do the best that he could. The work that he did with the Cherokee, that is a positive. So I don't want to go too far. I think that middle of the road, 5 each from both of us, that feels right.
All right.
And so that brings him down to 23.5. But now he has a chance to earn a few more points. And this one's going to be a good one for him, because this is our tenure of office round, which is the entire time that a cabinet member served in a full-time capacity. And of course, Wirt, his dates in terms of being in office: November 13th, 1817 to March 4th, 1829. And so if we round, even though he said 12 years, it rounds to 11 years. It's 11 plus, but we just go ahead and round to 11, but that gets him 11 more points. So that is good.
Okay. I was going to say, if this is a 1 to 10 scale, I'm not sure how we're going to do this.
Exactly.
This makes more sense. I like it.
And so, opportunity for some bonus points. Unfortunately, he does not earn the bonus point if he served in more than one full-time cabinet position. He only served as Attorney General. But he does earn a bonus point if the cabinet member served in more than one presidential administration. He crossed over from Monroe to Adams, so he gets that bonus point. And unfortunately, those 7 electoral votes are not going to get him the bonus point for becoming president. That did not work out for Wirt.
President of Vermont.
President of Vermont. But that leaves us with William Wirt at a grand total of 35.5. So not shabby at all. That is actually, and especially for some of the folks that we've had, that puts him below John Quincy Adams, of course, but he's better than William H. Crawford. He's better than Benjamin Williams Crowninshield. We've got some folks that he is above, so that is good. It's definitely one of the better ones that we've had.
And what about who was our first? Edmund Randolph? As far as Attorney General?
Yes. So Edmund Randolph got a 17.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
considerably higher. I think this may be actually, yes. He beat the previous top attorney general was Levi Lincoln Sr. with 35. So that half point helped him.
Wow.
So
That's strategic.
half points do help. But we now have a final question to ask. Howard, after all I've shared about William Wirt's life and career and what we've discussed, do you think that this cabinet member is notable enough or impactful enough to earn a seat at the table of Cabinet All-Stars?
I really have to yes. Yes, he is. Absolutely. Obviously, amongst the cabinet and his contemporaries, for what he did, he absolutely deserves a seat at the table. And I hope that the seat is durable because he's going to sit there for 12 years.
He's going to be there for a while.
Yes.
I agree. I think that Wirt, and it's a shame that he is so forgotten because there is so much to his life. There's so much insight that he provides. Is he one of these folks that revolutionized everything? Not necessarily. And there was so much potential. There was so much that he did. This was a fascinating story. This is somebody that I'm going to talk about. And like you said, Howard, I still feel like I'm getting my head wrapped around him. So this is somebody that I'd like to research even further in the future. And for what he did, it was impactful.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, you could dive into any one of his sort of areas or cases, or I mean, you could just dive into the metaphors of William Wirt and have a hell of a time there, I think. Just his way with words is so impressive and often amusing that I think he deserves a second look just for that.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations, William Wirt. You may have only gotten 7 electoral votes, but you have actually earned a seat at the table of the Cabinet All-Stars. You can sit there with your whiskey and your cigar and just enjoy life and hopefully a good conversation with some of the folks around you.
Yes.
And with that, Howard, I cannot thank you enough for joining me for this episode and this journey. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I always enjoy an opportunity to get to talk with you.
The feeling is mutual. Likewise, it was a delight. And I think we should get together every so often and just talk about Wirt. We don't need microphones.
We don't need microphones, but we can bring some whiskey.
Ready to restart the William Wirt Society.
There we go. Coming soon to a city near you.
Yeah.
Well, for our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for this journey. Once you get done with this episode, check out Plotting Through the Presidents wherever you get your podcast. It is, Howard, I love all the work that you do with plotting, all the nuances that you bring up, and just some of the humorous parts of presidential history, as well as some of the more hard-hitting stuff. And I admire the work that you do with it. And for our listeners, I cannot recommend it enough. So Howard, thank you so much for your work in presidential history podcasting.
Oh, thank you.
And listeners, thank you again. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, stay safe and healthy, be kind to one another, and take care, dear friends.
Your sausage McMuffin with egg didn't change. Your receipt did. The sausage McMuffin with egg extra value meal includes a hash brown and a small coffee for just $5. Only at McDonald's for a limited time.
Prices and participation may vary.